Chapter 5, April 18th, 1917. Were you able to get some sleep? Dr. Harvey asked Amanda the following morning. She did not appear rested. May slid her arm around Amanda's waist, and she said, "She sat with Raymond most of the night, but he slept quietly. He is awake now. He ate some scrambled eggs earlier." Looking at Amanda, Dr. Harvey repeated his advice from the previous day. "I think it would be best if you stayed in town for a few more days." "We can't. We need to get back to the homestead," said Amanda. "What do I need to do to care for Raymond?" "You are a stubborn woman," he said almost affectionately. Amanda did not reply, but the look on her face confirmed she took pride in this observation. He then explained the essential steps for wound care, the importance of keeping Raymond's right leg immobile, and the need to contact him as soon as possible if the boy developed a fever or signs of inflammation around the wound. As he sometimes did to stress the importance of information given to his patients, he shared some history. The advice he gave was described centuries ago by Roman medical writer Celsus, who used the Latin words rubor, tumor, calor, and dolor for redness, swelling, heat, and pain, characteristic of the inflammation Dr. Harvey was concerned about. He handed a paper to Amanda. On it he had written instructions for Raymond's care. He concluded by saying, "Please bring Raymond to my office 5 days from now in any event. I would like to assess the wound healing and then make plans to replace the splint with a cast. He won't be able to bear weight on the leg for 5 or 6 months." The expression on Amanda's face mixed resolve with hesitation. She said simply, "Thank you." She turned to Axel. "Go to the stable and get Dan and Stormy into harness and hitched to the wagon. Ask the stable owner how much we owe for care of our horses. We've got a long trip to make, so we should start soon." "Let me suggest another way to get Raymond home," said Dr. Harvey. "This morning I called Mr. Matt, who lives out in your direction on Reservation Creek Road. He and one of his sons plan to come to town to get some supplies at the mercantile store. He will need a wagon to carry the supplies, so he intended to come to town with horses and a wagon. I'd asked him if he considered driving his automobile to town instead, and then taking you and your boys back to your homestead in auto. His son could load the supplies onto your wagon, drive the wagon to the Matt Ranch, and then bring the empty wagon back to your homestead. He would get his supplies, and you would get your wagon and horses, and Raymond would get home without bouncing around in the wagon for 12 miles. Amanda looked surprised, but very appreciative of the idea, and said, "Are you sure Mr. Matt was planning to come to town today? I don't want to cause him trouble." "Well," said Dr. Harvey, "he probably couldn't have waited a little longer to get the supplies, but he does need them. He's willing to drive his automobile to town and take you and your boys back to your homestead. I told him I'd call again after I discussed this plan with you." "You all are so kind," said Amanda, looking first at May and then at Dr. Harvey. "That plan sounds like a good one for us. I will call Mr. Matt. I expect he'll be here within an hour," he said. May asked, "Would you like to have a cup of coffee before you see patients today? The first appointment is not scheduled until 11 a.m. "I'd love a cup of coffee," he said. "May I use your telephone to call Mr. Matt?" After the telephone call, he asked Amanda, "Maybe I can learn a little more about your homestead and how you decided to come to this area." Specifying the most common land side for homesteads sponsored by the 1909 Homestead Law, he asked, "Are you working half a section?" Amanda replied, "We have half a section plus 80 more acres we were able to file on. Charles, my husband, had the well dug. It provides water year-round. Our home is about half a mile from Reservation Creek Road. We have glass windows. We brought them from Iowa when we moved here in 1914. Charles is a carpenter. He built the house with those windows in mind. We have 4 rooms, 5 if you count the kitchen and living area as 2, although they are really one large room together. It is very comfortable. Our stove keeps us warm during the winter. I play my piano. Charles had it shipped from Iowa too, and he plays the fiddle. Sometimes we sing while he and I play. Music is a part of our family. Sometimes neighbors come on Sundays, and we all sing and dance." "Does Axel go to school?" asked May. "Oh, yes," replied Amanda. "He walks to the Ash Grove School. Miss Martins is a wonderful teacher. We need to make different arrangements in the autumn because Axel will be in the 6th grade, so he'll need to get to Howard School." Dr. Harvey said, "You mentioned your husband is a carpenter. That is a special skill." Amanda's face brightened as she replied, "He is very skilled. He is able to make extra money by helping build homes. He has helped our neighbors and is helping another Iowa family now down by Ashland." "What animals do you have?" he asked. "A milk cow, a young steer, a sow pig, some chickens, and Bingo, our dog," replied Amanda. "They will all be happy to see us come home, especially the milk cow. Her udder will be ready to burst, and all need feed and water. "Well, I'd best go to my office now," said Dr. Harvey. "Remember to contact me right away if Raymond develops a fever or the skin around the wound becomes red and swollen. Mr. Matt will soon be here, so you and your sons can get back to your homestead." He turned to me. "There is no hurry for you to get to the office this morning. Just come when you can." "Thank you again, both of you, for all you have done," said Amanda as he opened the door to leave. "You are surely welcome," he said, and then he left the house. When May arrived at the office about an hour later, she told Dr. Harvey how Mr. Matt, a large burly man, had carried Raymond so carefully to his automobile, and how Amanda, Axel, and Raymond had each thanked her again before the auto moved away. The patients he saw that afternoon came with diseases and conditions of the type he had grown accustomed to seeing in this community. One patient, a Milwaukee Road lineman, aged 27, came to have his bandaged right hand examined. Dr. Harvey had applied the bandage the previous week after cleaning and stitching a laceration on the man's palm, and repairing the stump of a thumb that remained after the hand was caught between ends of two rails during an attempt to repair a railroad track. The wound edges were red but not swollen. Dr. Harvey cleansed the area and applied a new bandage, hoping the man would escape osteomyelitis, a complication unfortunately common in injuries of this type. As Dr. Harvey offered instructions for further wound care, the man mentioned another problem. "Doc, I'm having pain when I pee." Dr. Harvey asked a series of questions. "When did you first notice this pain?" "A few days ago," he said. "How often does it occur?" "Each time I take a piss," he replied. "Does your urine have its usual color?" "It's cloudy, and it smells funny," he reported. "With whom have you had sex during the past month?" "I'm not married, no steady partner, but I had sex with prostitutes over in Miles City more than once," the man said. "Drop your drawers, and I'll take a look," said Dr. Harvey. He saw immediately a yellowish discharge from the man's penis and took a sample to stain and examine with his nearby microscope. Within a few minutes, he provided a diagnosis and treatment. "I suspect you know already you have a case of the clap," he announced. "I'm going to infuse a solution into your urethra and keep it in place for a few minutes. Then I'll rinse out the solution with some warm salt water." "You mean you're going to put something into my pee hole?" queried the worried man. "Yes," said Dr. Harvey. "That's the treatment for gonorrhea. It is recommended daily for up to 4 weeks. I'll provide treatments here during the next week and prepare you to treat yourself at home after that." Dr. Harvey already knew Army physicians were treating tens of thousands of cases of gonorrhea with the same silver-containing solution, Protargol, that he was recommending to this man. The Army was prescribing daily irrigation for 3 months, but he doubted the chance of this railroad lineman would continue such a regimen more than 3 or 4 weeks. Even if the treatment was successful, he also suspected that despite his advice, the man would likely become reinfected from other partners. "I need to take a blood sample too," he told the lineman. "I'll send it to a laboratory in Helena to be tested for syphilis. We will talk more when I have the results," he continued. He knew if the laboratory found antibodies against syphilis in this blood, that a separate extensive treatment regimen would be needed. He would cross that bridge with this man if necessary. Another patient, a woman aged 68, had high blood pressure and large swollen ankles. She told of difficulty breathing. After examining her, he concluded her heart was slowly failing to function. She had been told by another physician that she had dropsy, and Dr. Harvey concurred with the diagnosis, although he told the woman her condition could also be called heart failure. He gave her a prescription for digitalis and told her it would help her heart function. She could fill the prescription at the pharmacy in the building right below his office. He also recommended a salt-restricted diet. and asked her to see May to schedule another visit in 2 weeks so he could assess how this dose of digitalis is working. Other patients he saw that afternoon included a man with tuberculosis who is continuing to lose weight, a woman with occasional urine incontinence who wanted to discuss the use of pesticide mentioned to her by a friend, and a young mother whose baby kept crying and refusing to breastfeed. He saw a half a dozen other patients as well. Dr. Harvey found his work stimulating and enjoyed being challenged to solve the wide variety of problems. He had come to learn that each day's ailments were completely different than the next. He wondered if medical science might one day be equipped to help with all these issues. He knew that in many cases there was only so much physicians could do. Around 5 p.m., May came into his office area in the examination room. "That was the last appointment for today," she said. "I have filed the records, receipts, and the IOUs. Some patients paid cash, some pledged to pay later. One wondered if you would barter your services for eggs or cheese. And of course the railroad visits are paid by the contracts with Milwaukee Road and Northern Pacific. I have the cash payments in an envelope in the safe. I'll take it to the bank on Friday." He had almost finished recording notes about the patients he had seen. He asked, "What did you tell the patient who wanted to barter for eggs and cheese?" "I told her I would need to discuss that with you, but for the time being the amount due would stay on our books," said May. "I'll give some thought to bartering. For now, however, keeping track of the amount due seems reasonable," he replied. He continued, "Thank you for the great work you do, and especially for your help with Amanda Swenson. I want to add some money to your pay this month to help with some of the expenses you incurred because of your kindness." "No extra pay, please. I was happy to help, and so were the folks at the library." "We know she would do the same for us if the shoe were on the other foot," replied May. "If we had a hospital in town, would you have admitted Raymond, as you said to Amanda?" "Yes, and she and Axel could have stayed with him. It would have been dangerous for them all, especially Raymond, to try to get home in a wagon so late in the day. Your kindness allowed them to avoid that danger. If a hospital were available, Raymond should have stayed for several days, even after his mother and Axel had returned to the homestead," he responded. May continued, "I do hope the commissioners decide to build a hospital. It's not only situations like Raymond's. Many patients who travel to Billings or Miles cities could have hospital care here instead. The commissioners are dealing with many issues, but I will encourage them to find a way to have a hospital built in Forsyth. It would be possible to attract a nurse or two to live here as well when full-time work at a hospital was available," said Dr. Harvey, looking beyond May as if staring into the future. "Thank you again," he continued. "It is a beautiful evening for your walk home. I am going to the cafe for a bite to eat. I might just see a commissioner while I am there." May put on her gray butterick coat with the collar draping over her shoulders. She held her purse in the crook of her arm as she opened the office door. "I really enjoy working here," she said, perhaps wondering how her job might be affected if more nurses moved to town. A few minutes later, Dr. Harvey left the office and walked half a block to the cafe. "Good evening, Alice," he said to the plump, middle-aged woman who was often his waitress at the cafe, which, aside from the saloons and the general mercantile store, had more visitors on most days than any other gathering places in town. "Any chance you are serving meatloaf tonight?" "Why, Dr. Harvey, of course we have your favorite dish. Every night we hope you come, and every night you do come, you order meatloaf, so we always try to have it," said Alice with a distinct Irish lilt. Dr. Harvey didn't eat at the cafe every night, but he had eaten there several times each week since he had arrived in town. "Please have a seat," she said as she gestured toward a small table with 2 chairs near a window where he often sat. "May I hang your coat while you're eating?" He nodded, handed his coat to Alice, and sat down. He had glanced around the room while talking with Alice. Although he saw no county commissioners, he noticed the bank cashier and a rancher sitting at a table near his. "Good evening, gentlemen," he said. The banker responded with a rousing, "Evening, doctor. Good to see you have some time to enjoy a meal. Seems like our town has more than enough maladies to keep you busy around the clock. You are welcome to join us if you like, but we are just finishing, so we may be leaving by the time your food is served." "I appreciate the offer, but I don't want to keep you from your families," replied Dr. Harvey. Alice arrived with the place setting and a cup of hot coffee. There was no need to ask about cream, since she knew he always drank his coffee black. "Would you like your potatoes mashed or boiled tonight?" she said, asking about one part of his meal that varied from visit to visit. Mashed potatoes and lots of butter, he said. And then he listened while Alice provided her always optimistic observations about how the town was growing, how more businesses would open and thrive in town, how electricity and telephone and connections had made life easier for town dwellers, and that these amenities would reach ranches and homesteads throughout the county in time, and how more teachers would be needed, how automobiles had mostly replaced horses and wagons, and more until she excused herself to check on diners at another table. While Alice had been talking, Dr. Harvey couldn't help overhearing some of the conversation between the banker and the rancher. Both were convinced German people living in Rosebud County and elsewhere in Montana must be watched carefully. They felt espionage or even sabotage might already be occurring by what they were calling pawns of the Kaiser, right here in Montana. Names mentioned in the conversation included Judge Crum, the district judge for this area, and the rancher, Mr. Mueller. To Dr. Harvey, these concerns seemed over-dramatized, quite unlikely to be occurring, and even less likely to pose a real threat to the U.S. war effort. However, part of the discussion between the banker and the rancher particularly concerned him. The banker had said, "I think we can make folks like Mueller pay a heavy price for disloyalty. The banknote for wheat seed he purchased will be due soon. He may not be able to make good on that note, and I don't think the bank is inclined to offer extensions to traders." To this, the rancher added, "By all rights, those acres should belong to real Americans anyway." Dr. Harvey recognized the toxic nature of these allegations and proposed remedies. When the banker and rancher stood to leave, he nodded his head in their direction, and said, "Good evening." Alice arrived with a nicely displayed plate full of meatloaf and steaming hot mashed potatoes with a pool of melted butter. After eating this and a piece of hot apple pie, he put $1.50 on the table and thanked Alice for another delicious meal. Then he walked across 9th Avenue to the Alexander Hotel and to his room.